Hi there, Andre here from Peak Motorcycles. In this video I'm going to be talking about seats, specifically seats for the Honda CRF300L and the CRF300 Rally. So as some of you might know, I have a Honda CRF300 Rally and the seat on it, it's okay, it's comfortable enough. I had my suspension upgraded, and what that means is the bike actually stands quite a bit higher now. And while it's still okay for me, it's definitely on the limit. So I was curious as to what could be done with the seat. I know that Kuba have had their lowering links out for a while, which is definitely an option for people who just need a lower bike generally, but that does also have an impact on the suspension once again. I was curious to know what could be done with the seats. Now there are several respected seats manufacturers around the world who everyone I think has been hoping is going to do something for the CRF300L and Rally, and they've been on the website for a long time and they just don't have stock. So like with so many things with these bikes, the supply chain just seems to be a little bit broken at the moment. So I've waited this long, it's been 6-7 months now, nothing's come out, so I thought I'd do my own. So rather than take apart my own seat, what I've actually done is I've managed to get hold of both a CRF300L seat and a CRF300 Rally seat. Now both of these are going to go away to a seat adjuster here in the UK. So Motorcycle Seatworks, they're about 60 miles from where I live, so I'm going to take them up there and they're going to see just how low they can make these seats. Now before I take them up there for them to do that, I thought it would be a useful thing to do is to actually have a really close look at these two seats side by side. I've had questions from people asking whether the L seat and the Rally seat are interchangeable. The Rally seat is a lot bigger, it's a lot thicker, there's a lot more padding in it. My suspicion is that actually they're not interchangeable, and that's mainly because the lug on the front of the fuel tank is different on the two bikes. On the CRF300L, it's a much flatter profile through the front, and on the Rally, you've just got this much steeper bit to fit the bigger tank in. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put both of these on the table, and then I'm just going to go through, I'm going to take a number of measurements. So I'm going to measure the width at different places for each seat. I'm then going to measure the thickness at different places through the seat, so I can just get an understanding of how much padding is in there now. I'm not going to attempt to measure a seat height with them, simply because when people sit on the seats compress. So all I'm really looking to do is to measure how much foam there is in the seats at the moment, how deep the seats are, and then after they come back from being trimmed and sculpted, just to see how much that has reduced by. I know that the more foam you take out, the less comfortable the seats become, but equally those people who are new to riding off-road, those people who are relative novices, or maybe those who are just getting a little bit older, they like the security of being able to get your feet down properly. I know you only really need to get one toe down, and for those of you who've been riding for many years, I'm sure having a low seat just so that you can get that confidence is slightly laughable, but a lot of people are learning, and there's people who are shorter in the leg who would also like to ride these bikes. So I'm interested to see what can be done with the stock seats just to make them lower. I'm going to take them over to the bench, I'm going to measure them one by one, I'll go through the measurements that I'm doing, I'll write them all down, don't need to take a note of them as they're going through, I'll put them all in the notes for this video if you want to take a look at the end. Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen the two seats side by side before, here you go. So the first thing you might notice is that the shape at the front, it's on the front of the Rally seat, which is this one, it's a much more rounded shape, it comes up much further. On the L seat, it's much narrower, it kind of goes more to a point, and that's for the fuel tank as much as anything. As we come further back, they've both got that lovely 1980s strap on them, and at the back end they're actually fairly similar, and I think that's because the tailpiece on both bikes is exactly the same. So really everything the further back you get needs to be identical, just so they fit together in the same way. The same racks fit the L and fit the Rally, so the holes that mount the seat at the back need to be in the same places. However, there is quite a big difference in the thickness of the seat, so it's probably not easy to see from that camera angle, but as I turn them around you'll see it, and actually the Rally seat is significantly higher, is significantly thicker. If I just put that on a bit of an angle and you see the two side by side, hopefully you can see it a little bit more easily there, just how much higher this is. There's probably at least maybe an inch, 2.5 centimeters as we go down. Also here, the L seat gets much narrower, and then it's kind of a bit more splayed, whereas the Rally seat is just much deeper through this section. The top piece is wider all the way up to the front, whereas here it does actually go a lot narrower. That's because I think the L is definitely more of a trail bike, and with the Rally they're trying to make it a bit more of an adventure bike, adding a bit more comfort. So I'm sure each has got its benefits. Probably for riding standing, you don't want to have quite as much width towards the front there. Who knows? Anyway, the seats, that is exactly as they are, that's exactly as they've been designed. If I turn them over, we have a look on the underside. They have basically the same sort of design So this piece right at the very back is exactly the same. So this is where the bolts go through. We then have the two hooks, which are kind of the same, but kind of from this point upwards, it does start to change a bit. So again, not sure if you can quite see it on there, but here we have this sort of panel here has a different sort of texture, and it seems to be getting deeper on the Rally seats than it is on the L seat. And then as we also have these rubber blocks. So on the L seats, they're just like sort of plain plastic, same up here, and I guess that's where it rests on the frame. On the Rally, we've got these rubber blocks, front and rear, which I guess just gives a little bit more cushioning where it's in contact with the bike, perhaps. I mean, these hooks are metal, both front and rear. So, you know, there's probably not that much movement once these are hooked in. Nevertheless, if you look at these hooks, particularly these ones here, if you can see that, they definitely just only hook from underneath, so there is room for the seat to actually move down against it. Okay, the next thing I'll do is I'll show you the front ends of them, which is where things might get to be a bit more clear as to what will fit with which bike. And you see that now we do have a difference, I think. So certainly the Rally seat has a much bigger distance here at the front. If I just measure that. So from the edge of that, that's about, well, if I'm measuring to the edge of that lip there, I think that's about 11 centimeters, whereas on the L seat it's about 6.5. Certainly the width here at the front there is about 20, the width here is about 15. So definitely the front section is quite different. It's also far steeper. On here it's quite a shallow angle because of the shape of the fuel tank. Here it's a much steeper angle, and particularly where that button is, that seems to be, you know, almost a lot more vertical on the Rally seat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take a number of measurements along the seat. So where I'm going to measure is the length across the front, the width across the front staples, and then across this line on the front bracket, then the middle of the button, and then along the front of the blocks. I'll use that the front for those blocks on the L seat, and then in front of the hooks, which is roughly where the strap is, then there is this line in the moulding. I'll measure along there, and then I'll measure behind the rear hooks. I'm going to measure that for both seats just so I get an idea of exactly how big they are. Now, I'm not expecting this is going to change a lot when they get recovered. There is a bit of padding on the side, but it's fairly thin, so I don't think there's a great deal that can be taken off. Maybe even a bit more that could come off on the L seat than on the Rally seat, interestingly enough. I think the pan shape under here must be quite a bit bigger. Anyway, here goes. I'm just going to do this bit fast, so bear with me while I go through and measure. That is the Rally seat measured. Same again for the L. So I'm just going to check a couple of measurements. So first of all, I'm pretty sure that everything up to about here is equal. So when I measure from that block, that's 22, same on there. Also when I measure from the back of there to the front of there, 24, again 24. So pretty much these two little holes, these two here, the two hooks there and the two loops on the back are actually the same on both seats. So everything else that changes is basically ahead of that. Now I can see that's a lot steeper than this is. I don't have an easy way to measure that, not consistently at least, but what I can do is just take a couple of measurements from here. So if I measure from basically from the top of there down to level with the end of that, so that is 19, in fact it's probably 20 on there, on here. In fact that distance is also about the same. So I think the main difference is really from the front of here down to the end, which there is 9 centimeters, and here is 5 centimeters. So it's really just that extra bit at the front there. I'm now going to take some measurements on the thickness of the foam, and the point I'm going to use is the middle of this channel here, which is pretty much in line with the middle of the band on the far side. So I've got these spring calipers, which I will attempt to use. So from the middle point there on the seat, on the L, it is pretty much bang on 5 centimeters thick. Next place I'm going to measure is just to the middle of this recessed section here, which is somewhat thicker. And then certainly if anyone's got a better way to do this, please let me know in the comments. That is pretty much bang on 6 centimeters. And then maybe the last place that I'll measure, what might be useful, is maybe through through the middle of the button. So this bit isn't actually the actual thickness because it includes the button as well, but it's probably the bit on the seat that people will be up against, so maybe it's useful to know. I'm now going to do all of those same measurements on the Rally seat. So that is all the measurements done. The next thing I'm going to do is weigh the seats. So if seeing things being weighed is not your thing, then please look away now. Okay, so I've just put this cardboard box on the top, so I'm actually just going to put each seat on top of that, and hopefully that will give it enough stability to actually weigh it. So first up is the Rally seat, which is 1572 grams, so 1.5 kilos. This will also give me an idea about how much weight they were actually able to take off them and how much foam they were able to take out. The L seat, by contrast, is 1390. So the L seat is about 200 grams lighter. Okay, so I think that's now all the measurements taken. The very last thing I want to do is just to measure the full length of the seats. So all I'm measuring right here is that from the front of there all the way to the back is 67 centimeters for the L. For the Rally, that same length is 69 centimeters. So the Rally seat is 2 centimeters longer end to end. It does go, it's longer than that way, but because it does go up that much more steeply at the front, that's where the extra length is lost. So the last thing I'm going to do, because somebody had asked when I put the post up about this on community, is I'm going to take my seat off and I'm going to see if an L seat will fit a Rally. Now I suspect that there's probably more people wanting to go the other way, from an L to a Rally rather than from a Rally to an L, if they want the extra comfort, but I'm just curious to know exactly how this works. That is the Rally seat coming off my bike. So basically what I need to try and do now is see if this lug on the front will actually go onto the lug on the fuel tank of the Rally. And actually, from looking in there, there is no chance that is going to fit. So essentially under there right now is where it needs to be, but because this seat is so much flatter, it's not actually going to go. Now it might be easier to do it the other way. You could put a Rally seat on an L, but again the opposite would, I think, would be true. You'd have to be pushing the Rally seat down quite a lot. Now because of how this goes on, where it kind of hooks in and does actually bend that way, that might even be possible. So if I come across anyone with an L who wants to see if a Rally seat will fit, then I'm happy to see if that will transition between the two bikes. Right, I'm just going to put this back together again. So that's it. So that's everything done for part one of this video about the CRF300L and Rally seats. I'm guessing some of it is probably no surprise really. The Rally seat is a little bit wider. It's 2 to 3 centimeters thicker across pretty much all the length, and it's also about 200 grams heavier. So what will be interesting to see is what happens to them when they come back. So they'll be going off to Motorcycle Seatworks tomorrow. I think they're going to have them for a few days, so I'll go and pick them up next week. So I will record a part 2 to this once I have the seats back and I know how they've changed. I do actually have 3 of each, so if you're in the UK and you're interested in trying one of them, please let me know. I know a couple of them already spoken for, but the others will be up for anyone that's interested. I hope this has been interesting and useful. If it has, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.